In a world where Pokemon clones are slowly eclipsing Pokemon itself, we have games like Evertale, which, instead of using what talent they possess to create a game that could truly captivate players interested in what is evidently a very large, very lucrative market, they opted to engage in deceptive practices attempting to lure you in with targeted advertisements like this. Or this. After downloading the game, due to your now piqued interest, you're met with, well, something very different to what you'd anticipated, which leaves you A, immediately deleting the game. They outright lied to you to get you to download the game after all. This is the logical course of action. Or B, giving them the benefit of the doubt. They didn't mean any harm by deliberately misdirecting you, right? Hey, my name is Stix and welcome back to the worst gacha ever, a video series where I discuss a gacha and tell you guys what I thought in explicit detail as we attempt to find the worst gacha ever. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel, hitting that little bell notification, that way you remain up to date with every single thing that I post, and I post several times per month. Do not miss out. Now let's see if I can go ahead and capture that attention of yours. I've poured over 100 hours into Evertale. I spent at least 100 of those hours absolutely wishing I was anywhere at all else. You begin in a forest, and over the next 100 or so hours, you're still in the forest. There are some diverse biomes present for you to explore. Here, we have the forest that we'll spend the vast majority of our time in. Here we have a snowy forest. I know, creative geniuses. Here's a forest at night. Or, if that isn't enough forest variety, here's a forest that's a different shade of green. In this forest over here, the devs copy-pasted a low poly count sky into the water. That's kinda cool. To really maximize player immersion, allow me to introduce you to a sandy forest, a true project of passion. Unfortunately, the bulk of the game takes you all around the world with largely repetitious environments. To add insult to injury, Evertale has one of the most bloated, most cumbersome, overwhelmingly convoluted stories I've ever bore witness to. Emphasis on the bore. You're an unoriginal, uninspired character with no personality at all, which works for some games. They're an avatar, an extension of your own choices and decisions, but here, where every cutscene lasts longer than the length of the entire zone you just navigated through, where sitting through and reading the story segments required more patience in the slow, arduous battles out in the world. No, don't get me wrong, gacha games and bad stories are relatively synonymous with one another, and a bad story isn't going to immediately inhibit a game if there are other areas that it excels in. Running around the world of Evertale is entirely manual. You control, oh god, what was his name again? Ben? As you move in a relatively linear path from one end of the zone to the next, looting the odd chest and fighting monsters you encounter while running through tall grass. There is very little purpose to exploring, as there is very little to explore. There is very little that requires your attention. Evertale would honestly have benefited largely from being a chapter and mission-based game like Punishing Grey Raven, like Azure Lane, like Ether Gazer, rather than attempting this poor man's segregated world. You see the occasional NPC out in the world that stops you and challenges you to a duel, half of which immediately release their battle-hardened monsters back into the wild, rather than retaining them following their recruitment after their defeat. And you know what? Let's just take a step back here. Imagine if they didn't do that. Imagine if these NPCs kept their monsters. So after joining you, they could still summon those monsters in battle to aid you, to aid them. You could deploy 6 NPCs. Those 6 NPCs would each deploy the 6 monsters that they already had access to, totaling 36 monsters. Every boss monster would cower in fear at my absolute power. Alas, that just isn't the case. Thankfully, there's more to this game than merely running around the forest attacking random people. A little anyway. There's a button down the bottom right that reads Home. This takes you out of the world and to a number of different menu items. Let's start with the Tower of Trials. This is an entirely idle game mode. You'll deploy a team of up to 4 units at a time and engage a selection of recruitable characters in what I assume is an endless tower, because I've never reached the end. I made it to, at present, like floor 78 with a little more grinding. I could no doubt push much higher, but the difficulty scaling in this game is horrible. You'll clear 6 floors without issue, the next 2 will take you a week to overcome, and then the next 12 will be easier than the previous 6 were. It's almost as though it was programmed by someone who added random zeros to character stats at random intervals. Nevertheless, this is an important mode as it provides you with a surplus of daily claimable resources that you'll need to progress through the game. You get daily additional clears, fast forward tokens, several ways to speed things up and reward you with additional goodies. War of the Realms is an activity that I never engaged in due to it being tied to, I believe, guilds. Clicking Go to War takes you to an overworld map with guilds actively engaged in both offensive and defensive skirmishes with one another. I can't imagine guild wars in a gacha game being all too fulfilling or rewarding though, given how pay to win these kinds of games can be. Every player in the dominant guild likely fields the meta team with fully upgraded characters, and it's just GG. Alliance quests are short, smaller scale boss fights that you could do each day, rewarding you with alliance experience and fame. The arena pits your team against a team of another player. You don't directly control your team, nor does the enemy player control theirs. The only gacha I genuinely participate in the PvP of is Nikke. Evertale reminds me of why this is the case. I absolutely abhor the pay-to-win AI-controlled PvP in this game. Raids have you engage larger boss fights consisting of up to 3 players total. Raids occur twice daily, rewarding you depending on the difficulty of the raid that you happen to clear. The training dojo exists as a means to guide you on how to play the game, and yes, that is an Agumon. There are numerous events going on per month, all with their own deeply developed story. Oh god, I tried, but I could not say that with a straight face. The stories in these events, while better than the base story, really do not do the game any favors. But they do reward you with some incredible rarity gear, so I do them if only for that. Combat is turn-based. You select abilities, the enemy selects abilities, and both parties move back and forth, exchanging blows with one another. There really isn't much complexity to the combat. Higher rarity units are more powerful and have access to better, well, everything. You acquire those, and then you win the game. Little effort involved. That's what I did with Lancelot. She is an absolute monster in the on the battlefield. You create several platoons and field one at a time. Platoon power is based off of not only the characters, their rarity, how upgraded they are, but also the weapons that they have equipped. Heroes have their own affinity with different weapon types. Some prefer swords, some prefer maces, some prefer staves. This also applies to the accessories, all of which have their own rarities and methods of acquisition. Players have their own individual levels: awakening level, limit break level, boost level, potential percentage, and mastery level. Yeah, you're really required to micromanage that many different resources to fully min-max your team, which is overwhelmingly obnoxious. You should not have to focus on what is essentially 6 different types of leveling. Worse than that, weapons have almost the exact same options, and every upgrade category has their own upgrade resource. This is absolutely atrocious. Who thought of this? The Forge allows you to convert characters and weapons into items. Mercenaries are characters you allow your friends to use without you being logged in, and your Fellowship provides a number of beneficial stat boosts depending on which characters you've recruited. The gacha is bad, which seems par for the course with this game. There are a dozen different banners running concurrently, all of which are premium. You're required to purchase crystals with real money to pull for those characters, meaning free players are gated from participation. SSR heroes have a 1% chance to be obtained, with SR having 3% and R having 40%. SSR weapons have a 4% chance, with SR weapons at 12% and R weapons at 40%. You're guaranteed an SR unit, weapon, or character every 10 pulls. However, pity, your guaranteed character is set at 500. Yeah, 5 freaking 100 pulls. That is absolutely absurd, and honestly another reason I really do loathe this game. In all this time, I acquired a single SSR. One. Lancelot. The acquisition of fun, max rarity units is integral to my enjoyment in a gacha game, and honestly a lot of people that I know's enjoyment in a gacha game. Preventing me and other people from ever obtaining one leaves me unattached. It leaves me growing distant. There is a free summon, but it never provides anything of worth, from my experience anyway. Evertale is a bad game with great ideas, built entirely on the foundations of a lie. They had a great concept, but horrible execution. The best part of this game is the skip feature because you want to play as little of it as possible. Never playing this game again would be too soon. Now let's go ahead here and break down my rating. Gameplay, 2 out of 10. Honestly, the turn-based combat is bland, the animations are bad, the models are plain, the world and the traversal are all clunky and very unintuitive. Story, 2 out of 10. I don't think I've played a gacha game with as boring of a story as this at all this year, and that's saying something given I've played some complete idle games. Graphics, 3 out of 10. Some of the characters, like Lancelot, actually do look kinda good, but 99% of the characters that you obtain through free means all look trash comparatively, and the copy-paste areas are very tiring to look at. There's only so many forests that I can explore without losing my mind. Sound, 2 out of 10. I didn't hear a single worthwhile song at all. Free-to-play friendliness, 1 out of 10. Absolutely pay-to-win trash. Most of the banners were premium banners only, and there were literal dozens of them trying to force players into spending as much as they can to remain relevant in some capacity. Overall, I'd give this 10 nevers out of 50 tails, or 2 out of 10, as in, I would never, ever play this game again. You couldn't pay me to.
Hey you, where do you think you're going? Don't you close out of this tab. I didn't give you permission to do that. Sit your ass back down. Click one of the 2 videos that are gonna be on screen in just a moment and keep watching my content. Keep enjoying my content.